One batch, two batch, penny and dime.
It's plenty of time now that you're home.
You had one job. One job. Make an awesome Punisher show. Couldn't even do that. So the Punisher premiered on Netflix, and honestly, I almost kind of forgot about it because it came out the same day as Justice League, and I was like, oh, Punisher's out, so I gotta watch it. And I feel like that's how most people are kind of treating it. They just kind of forgot it. But I was actually really excited about this because Jon Bernthal was excellent in Daredevil. He was so scary and menacing and violent in Daredevil, and I was like, if we're just gonna get a whole show of that, like, that's awesome. We didn't get a whole show of that. We basically got a show where Jon Bernthal and Post Malone are sitting in a room full of computers for like 5 episodes, and they're just kind of talking. It's also a show about this police woman, and we see her like life, and it was really unnecessary, and it felt like filler. Like, all of these Netflix Marvel shows have a police character in them, but like in Daredevil, we don't see that cop's like life. He kind of just shows up every now and then and does some cop shit, and he talks to Daredevil and whatever. This felt really odd. It kind of felt, whenever it switched over to the cop, it felt like I was watching like Law and Order or something. I was like, this should have been retitled like Law and Order Hell's Kitchen or something. Like, that would have been a more appropriate title for this, because honestly, Frank Castle for most of the show is like out of commission. He's just sitting around with Post Malone in his little cave, and it's just boring. Like, it's not necessarily a bad show, it's just boring. Like, nothing happens. I think I counted, and I may be off by like 1 or 2, but if I remember correctly, there's only like 6 Punisher action scenes, and they're all relatively like a minute long. They're not super long, and they're honestly kind of disappointing too. But there's only 6. Again, give or take 1 or 2. Throughout the entire show, there's 13 episodes. Each episode's 50 minutes, and there's only 6 Punisher action scenes in the movie. And I mean, the action scenes are good. They're violent. And the Punisher, when he's doing his Punisher shit, is being the Punisher. They didn't fuck that up. But it's like, this is just, like, I was expecting, like, I know you have to make, like, a show. You can't just have 13 hours of straight violence. I mean, you probably could. But if you're gonna make it, like, a more character, like, driven show, at least have the characters in the show be interesting, because the only interesting characters were Frank and Post Malone. Like, they were the only interesting ones. And we're focusing on this support group for veterans, this cop lady, Billy Russo. Billy Russo was kind of a shitty villain. Like the crazy veteran kid who just was nuts. Like, he was a much better, far more interesting villain than Billy Russo was. He should have just been the main villain. Like, what the fuck? He wasn't even really a villain. I think the Punisher like meets him once and then just like punches him in the neck, and then he dies. It was just so boring. There is some good to it though. I do like, there are several kind of dream sequences throughout the show with Frank Castle kind of hallucinating about his wife and his family. Those are all really well done and very well executed, and it actually gives Jon Bernthal a chance to like show off his acting chops, and he does a fucking fantastic job of doing that. Again, I like the relationship between Frank Castle and Microchip. They actually kind of worked well together. There were several scenes of them just being like sarcastic assholes to each other, and I was like, that's a good scene. Again, the action scenes were all well done. They were all fine. They weren't like Iron Fist. They were serviceable. They were like, I was like, all right, that's cool. But at the end of the day, like, if you want to see the Punisher action, those clips will be online in like a day. So just watch the clips online, because there's only like 6 of them. Like, I don't know. I just expected a little more, because Daredevil knows how to, like, it's a show about Matt Murdock, but when it cuts to the other characters, it's still interesting and engaging, and I'm still into it, because they kind of play into the overall story, and they're all kind of doing stuff. They're all doing their own little thing. This one, for most of the fucking show, it's just lollygagging. Like, I know it's building stuff and it's setting stuff up, but it's like I'm watching True Detective Season 2 again. Like, it's such slow build-up. It's not necessarily bad, it's just slow. And I don't care about any of these characters, so when something does happen to someone, I'm like, okay, I don't like you. It's just, it's weird that Daredevil is a better Punisher show than The Punisher. And I keep saying, you know, it's better, but I mean, this isn't a bad show. I don't want to stress that. It's kind of like Assassin's Creed. It's just painfully average. It's an average show. I don't think, if I was to rewatch it, I would probably fast forward through all the police drama and the veteran support group drama stuff and just watch the Frank Castle stuff and the Microchip stuff. That's it. I would just fast forward through all that stuff, because it's so slow. And honestly, Frank's like a side character almost. Like, it's his show, and he's kind of a side character. Like, what the fuck? So I'm gonna talk a little bit about spoilers. There's not really a whole lot to spoil. I mean, if you know how these things work, it's gonna end up how it ends up. But basically, Punisher takes down Billy Russo, who is Jigsaw, which I was disappointed. Like, what? I'm kind of sick of these Netflix villains just being people in like suits. It was like that in Luke Cage with Cottonmouth, which he was cool. They made a shitty villain somewhat interesting. But they're all just like people in suits, like doing stuff. And it's like, you couldn't fuck up his face a little bit? And they do at the end when he's in the hospital. But it's like, the Punisher would have fucking killed him. He wouldn't have let him live. He would have shot him in the brain and killed him. I don't care how close of friends they fucking were. Frank Castle doesn't give a fuck. But like, it's setting up a season 2, and then, like, if they do a season 2, make it better. Make it a little faster pace. Have a little bit more action in it. Don't have 8 episodes of Frank Castle sitting in a bat cave yelling at somebody. Like, that's most of the show is that. It's him and Microchip just fucking sitting around like doing nothing. I don't understand whose idea it was to make the Punisher like not be the Punisher in the show, because I mean, for most of the show he's either sitting around, or he's talking to one of his veteran friends, or he's playing with children, or he's fixing a car, or he's talking to this woman, or he's just like doing like mundane like everyday shit, and I'm like, that's not entertaining. I'm sure it's like realistic and it fits with Frank's character, but it's not an entertaining show. Like, I don't want to watch 13 hours of that, you know? And I will say the first episode started good. I didn't really like, the first episode had these super generic, like, douchebag assholes in it, and I was like, God, these guys are so, like, cartoony asshole, like, bitches. I can't wait till they fucking die. And they actually go out in a pretty badass way, by Frank. But that was an okay first episode, but then it just kind of slows down. I will say it is better than Iron Fist, and it is better than Luke Cage. I at least remember this show. I don't remember fucking anything from Luke Cage or anything from fucking Iron Fist. I at least will remember certain parts of this show. And honestly, the war flashbacks that Frank Castle was having would have made a better show. Why not set this during his time in the war? That would have been fucking awesome. We could have like a war Punisher show. Like, that would be awesome. See him just mowing down people, because there's a really fucking awesome and intense action scene from him in the war. And he's just like beating the fuck out of people. And I'm like, that's a great fucking action scene. That's a great scene. It has the same problem that like Iron Fist and Luke Cage had, where it seems like they had an idea for like a movie and they just kind of stretched that over 13 episodes because they couldn't come up with an idea for a story that lasted that long. Because that's what Iron Fist and Luke Cage are. And I mean, Daredevil has filler episodes, but even then, there's still some action in it going on. There's still like, they give you some action, being like, all right, it's a filler episode, but here you go. And this, it's just like, it's a filler episode, and then you just get a bunch of people talking, and then the episode's over. So would I recommend The Punisher? No, not really. I don't. Look up the scenes on YouTube or watch season 2 of Daredevil, because season 2 of Daredevil was far more brutal, I think, in my opinion, and really gave more of a backstory for Frank Castle than this show did. This show gave a little bit of backstory, but not as much as Daredevil did. Like, just watch Daredevil. You should be watching Daredevil anyway, because it's a fucking great show. But like, there are so many memorable Punisher fights in Daredevil season 2 that are like the ones in this show don't even compare. The jail scene in Daredevil was excellent. The diner scene was excellent. No action scene in here really got me that fucking like amped. I was like, yeah, this is great, except for that war flashback fight scene. That was really the only one. So The Punisher was a huge disappointment to me. I really hope they kind of fix these Netflix shows, because I mean, Defenders was great, but they've been kind of in a lull recently, and I hope they kind of get out of there, because if this is the future of the Netflix shows, we're gonna get some boring fucking shows.
Frank Castle's back.
The Punisher? He's dead.
Just look like the work of a dead man to you.